Could the WNBA be headed to a lockout?
Everything is pointing to a player strike, basically a lockout for next season.
The WNBA is freaking out after top players demanded better pay, real revenue share, and actual respect.
If the negotiations are stalled, then we could see a lockout.
A massive lockout is looming, and the clock's ticking. Even with record-breaking growth driven by Caitlin Clark and a few other stars, this league still finds a way to underpay the very women keeping it alive.
Here's what Nafisa Collier had to say about the protest after the game.
You have the players of what is building this brand and this league.
Over 40 players showed up wearing t-shirts that screamed, "Pay us what you owe us." And honestly, good for them. Subtlety? Never heard of it, but it's not just fashion drama we're dealing with.
Over the weekend during the warm-ups of the All-Star game, over 40 WNBA players wore "Pay Us What You Owe Us" t-shirts, putting pressure on the WNBA.
This was a warning shot and not the cute kind, because behind those shirts is a league sitting on a ticking time bomb called the Collective Bargaining Agreement, which, by the way, is set to expire on October 31st, 2025. Spooky timing, huh? A Halloween deadline for what might be the death of their own season.
Pick one issue to prioritize in the new CBA, what would it be? Now, 70% of the respondents said higher salaries, 8% said more roster spots, 8% said minimum standards, 5% said more resources for families.
And here's the best part. This whole meltdown is happening while the WNBA is supposedly in its golden era. You'd think they'd be riding high, right? Caitlin Clark's filling up arenas. Angel Reese is trending every 5 minutes. Social media's actually talking about the WNBA for once, and not just to roast their attendance. But guess what? None of that matters if your house is on fire and your leadership is pouring gasoline on it.
The league has grown by multitudes in many different metrics over the past few years due to players like Caitlin Clark.
Now, instead of sitting down and working things out like grown adults, the league and the players already tried to hash it out during AllStar Weekend. 2 meetings, 0 progress, nada. According to insiders, it didn't just go poorly, it was an epic fail. Everyone left looking like they just sat through a root canal, so now the players are done being polite. They're not negotiating, they're warning. Those shirts weren't just statements, they were previews of the chaos coming if things don't change. And honestly, with how this is going, change isn't just needed, it's way overdue.
The t-shirt, just United front, was determined this morning that we had a meeting for. And, not to tattletale, but 0 members of Team Clark were very present for that.
But here's where it gets hilariously tragic. While players are out here begging for scraps, the league itself is out here breaking records. Like, actual records. Attendance is up 13% from last year. The average crowd size now? 11,000 people per game. That's almost double from 2022, when it was only 5,600. I mean, imagine growing your audience by thousands and still telling your employees, "We'll see what we can do." You'd be laughed out of any other industry.
Attendance is up 13% year over year, and ticket sales have grown 26%. The average attendance for a game grew to 11,000 this year, which is up from 5,600 in 2022. Even All-Star voting soared.
And wait, it gets even more embarrassing. Ticket sales? Up by 26%. That's not just growth, that's an explosion. All-Star votes? In 2023, they barely cracked 96,000. In 2024, boom, 1.29 million votes. You don't get those numbers unless people actually care. The league's finally getting attention, finally pulling in real fans, and they're still playing broke? Please.
Kathy Engelbert and everyone else is on this side. Things did not go well during those All-Star meetings, and that is a big reason why they wore the shirts that they did that said, "Pay us what you owe us."
Let's talk franchises. In 2023, Golden State Valkyries joined the league for $50 million. Just 1 year later, new teams are paying $250 million each to join. That's a 5x price jump in 12 months. 5 times. Imagine buying a $50 meal and the next year it costs $250, and the chef still tells you they can't afford salt. It's laughable. Meanwhile, the Valkyries, they're already worth over $500 million. That's a 10-fold return on investment. so the money is clearly there, just not for the women actually playing the game.
Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia are all set to join the WNBA between 2028 and 2030, and each of those expansion fees has been $250 million.
Now here's the part where I actually feel like flipping a table. The revenue split between players in the league, WNBA players get 9.3%. 9.3. The NBA gives its players 50%. That's not a gap, that's a canyon. NBA rookies make more cash sitting on the bench scrolling Twitter than WNBA stars who are carrying the entire league on their backs.
WNBA players currently receive 9.3% of the revenue, whereas in the NBA, players share 50% of basketball-related income. So the revenue sharing is a little bit complicated.
Let's look at the salaries, shall we? The minimum WNBA salary is $66,000. If you're lucky enough to hit the top tier, you might pull in $249,000. Now compare that to the minimum salary in the NBA, $1.27 million. That's the lowest you can make in the NBA. And it's still 5 times more than the WNBA's maximum. You can't even call that a pay gap. That's a full-blown financial blackout.
It's important to remember that the WNBA league minimum is around $66,000, with the maximum being around $249,000, whereas in the NBA, the league minimum is $1.27 million.
Players aren't even asking for the moon here. They just want a flexible revenue model, something that grows as the league grows. Seems fair, right? If the league's making more, the players should too. But instead, they're stuck with fixed contracts while the owners are popping champagne and throwing parties in their $1 million skyboxes. It's wild how the league wants to expand everything except the paycheck.
The league is also interested in coming to the table and figuring this out because no one wants a lockout, and especially with other competitive leagues popping up overseas or even domestically with things like Unrivaled, there could be other places that WNBA players could go.
And get this, the owners only control 42% of the league, which means even they aren't fully in charge of how the money's split. So the excuse of "we'd love to pay more but our hands are tied" falls apart real quick. The problem isn't the math, the problem is the priorities. They'd rather keep growing the brand on the backs of underpaid athletes than actually pay up. They're treating the players like side characters in their own league. The players, meanwhile, just want a piece of what they helped build. They're not asking for fairy tales. They built the hype. They brought the fans. They turned this league into something people finally care about. And in return, they get some vague promises and maybe a free hoodie from Kathy.
The average WNBA franchise is valued at $269 million, which is up 180% year over year. And the Golden State Valkyries that were bought for $50 million are now worth over $500 million.
At this point, the league should be grateful the players are still even showing up. Because if I were them, I'd be looking for the emergency exit. And unless something changes fast, that's exactly what's coming. The players aren't bluffing anymore. They've done the interviews, the surveys, the shirts. They're done being nice. The WNBA had all the momentum in the world, and they're fumbling it like a hot potato on national television.
All of the problems could be solved if the players just essentially got a raise. Now, do we know how much these players are asking for in these negotiations? That is still off the table, and we will probably never know, and it's probably a good thing that we don't know.
Charter flights, ladies and gentlemen, the bare minimum finally delivered like it's some groundbreaking innovation. After years of flying coach like unpaid interns on a Spirit Airlines budget, WNBA players are finally getting chartered. And guess what? The league still acts like it's doing them a favor. Like, congrats on catching up to 2006, I guess? But don't celebrate yet because the flights are still inconsistent. Some teams are hopping planes like it's a scavenger hunt, while others are still stuck in delayed due to weather mode. It's giving chaos.
I know that there have been so many conversations about the WNBA being a league that hasn't profited, about the NBA subsidizing the WNBA, about the WNBA losing money and the ratings and all of these types of things.
And let's talk rosters. You know how normal professional leagues have backups, rotation players, depth? Not the WNBA. These teams are out here using hardship contracts like they're printing coupons. It's like a high school group project where half the group doesn't show up and the rest just try to survive. You're telling me we've got record-breaking attendance, exploding viewership, and still not enough players to fill a bench without calling in someone who was bagging groceries last week? Iconic mismanagement.
and the players do need to get compensated more. They do need to be paid more. And with the trajectory of the WNBA, assuming that it can stay on the path that it is currently going, the WNBA is seeing success that it has never seen in the entirety of its existence.
But don't worry. Instead of fixing that, the WNBA's got plans to expand. Yup, bring on more teams. Cleveland, Detroit, Philadelphia, all joining by 2030. Which sounds exciting until you realize they can't even staff the teams they already have. Why build more ships when you're already taking on water? It's like your house is on fire and you go, let's build a second story. Make it make sense.
Now, Gabby Williams brings up a very good point that a lot of players, because they weren't going overseas and because they were playing in Unrivaled during the off season and they were making money there, they were able to get into the WNBA season quicker.
Now here's where it gets juicy. Say hello to Unrivaled, a new player-owned league created by none other than Nafisa Collier and Brianna Stewart. And listen, Unrivaled is not some side hustle. It's real. It's funded, and it's giving the WNBA an identity crisis. Because it has what the WNBA doesn't: flexibility, money, and respect for the athletes running the show. Players can make bank without being slaves to TV ratings, without begging for charters, and without answering to out-of-touch execs who think hardship contracts are a long-term plan. And oh, the WNBA hates it. Of course they do. Because Unrivaled proves the truth they've been dodging for years: that the players don't need the league nearly as much as the league needs them. The WNBA's entire identity hinges on stars like Brianna and Fee, and now those stars are basically saying, we've got other options, thanks. The power dynamic just flipped, and Kathy and company are sweating bullets.
Everything is pointing to a player strike happening. And that worries me a little bit for the league because, like I said, this is the height of the WNBA probably since the 1990s.
Meanwhile, WNBA leadership is flailing. They're losing control, and the people taking the wheel are the very stars they tried to muzzle. Nafisa Collier literally wore an Unrivaled t-shirt during the All-Star draft. That wasn't a wardrobe malfunction, that was a warning shot. On national TV, in front of sponsors, in front of the commissioner, straight trolling, and she did it with a smile. That's the kind of flex you only pull when you know they can't touch you. Let's be real. If a lockout happens, Unrivaled wins by default. They'll scoop up the players, scoop up the hype, and leave the WNBA scrambling to explain why their stars are gone and their arenas are empty. This isn't just a labor dispute. This is a war for relevance. And the WNBA's losing it in slow motion.
By something like a strike or something like a lockout. And I'm sure all of this is so stressful, not only for the players, but the players and the WNBA PA and the owners and Kathy Engelbert. I'm sure this is like such a rough time for everyone.
But wait, it gets worse. The deadline to fix all of this is October 31st, 2025. But insiders are already whispering about a stalled season in 2026. Translation, they're not gonna get it done. Negotiations are going nowhere, everyone's angry, and no one trusts the other side. So let's do some quick math. No deal equals no games. No games equals no fans. No fans equals no money. No money equals no league. Real inspiring business model they've got over there. Look, we all remember the 2011 NBA lockout. The season got shortened, games were crammed, and it still caused chaos. But here's the thing, the NBA had enough clout and capital to survive that. The WNBA doesn't. They can't afford to fumble this. One lost season and all that momentum goes straight into the trash. Everything Caitlin and Angel built? Gone. Every fan that just discovered the league? Gone. Every sponsor on the fence? Gone.
2011, the NBA had an extended lockout that saw a season start much later, and there's only around 66 games, which were much more tightly packed.
And why? Because of greed, bad math, and the absolute refusal to listen to the very women keeping this league alive. This isn't just mismanagement, it's self-destruction. The shirt said it best. Pay us what you owe us, and if they don't, good luck streaming replays of games no one wants to watch while Unrivaled eats your lunch and your dignity. But hey, At least the charter flights will be empty, and if the WNBA still doesn't get it, don't worry, we'll be right here to roast every second of the fallout. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next meltdown.